All right, hello everyone. I am going to demonstrate and explain the properties of inheritance. So I have created a folder called inheritance, and I'm going to show you how inheritance applies to this folder here from the root folder. So if I go to properties and I go to security, here are the list of all the accounts. So this is the access control list. And if I click on advanced, it shows me all of the permission entries. These are all the accounts. Now, if you notice, the checkbox that says include inheritable permissions from the object's parent is checked and it's grayed out. It means that inheritance is applied. So the permissions that these accounts are getting are from the folder above. So if I click on change permissions, it opens up another dialog box here where I can uncheck include inheritable permissions from this object's parent. Now if I uncheck that, I'm presented with this Windows security dialog box, and I'm presented with three options. One is to add, remove, or cancel. Adding is to convert and add inherited parents' permissions as an explicit permission on this object. Now in previous versions of Windows Vista, there was that add button was actually copy. So it's copy, remove, and cancel. But Windows 7 and Windows Server 2008 R2, not Windows 2008, added the add button. If I were to click remove, it's going to remove everybody as you see here. So you're basically just wiping the slate clean and starting over again. But I don't recommend that you do that. What I do recommend is to add. So I'm going to cancel out of this. I'll click on change permissions again. I'll uncheck this checkbox and I'll click add. And if you notice that the inherited from now shows not inherited, but it still retains the access control list and the access control entries. Now I can decide that I like the users on this folder and I want all the subfolders to inherit these permissions, then I would just check replace all child object permissions with inheritable permissions from this object. Actually, this is different than previous versions of Windows where you would go into the last folder in the hierarchy and you would check a box that says inherit permissions from above, and that would be the way that you would use the hierarchy of the folder to set permissions down. Whereas this is you're doing it from top down to set permissions, inheritable permissions, and in previous versions you would inherit from bottom up. So I'm going to click OK here, and then I'm going to click OK here. Now I want to show you something else. The difference between implicit and explicit permissions. Implicit permissions are also known as inherited permissions. That means that those permissions are inherited from the folder above. So if you notice that the checkbox the checks are now solid black, which means that the folder has you can set explicit permissions on the accounts. If I click out of here and I go back to a root folder here and I click properties and I go to security, if you notice they are light gray, which means these permissions are inherited from the folder above. So I'll go back into this HSS IT Tech Day, go into the inheritance folder here, right click properties, security, and you'll notice that these permissions are solid black. So it means they are explicit, which means you have to explicitly set the permissions. I'll explain later what the order of precedence for permissions. Thanks.